that took place in Cape Town. Another important conference impacting sourcing at scale took place in Johannesburg. We'll also have info on the anti-Cell C banner that was erected in Johannesburg. Tonight, our studio guests will talk about new city domain names and comets. We have more information for you. Find us on SABC Network on Facebook and Twitter. We're on News Network at sabc.co.za on email. Let's start with your social media and technology news. Cape Town hosted the 17th annual AfricaCom this past week. Network producer Lebusi Jage attended the event to find out more about the ICT industry's plans to turn Africa into a smart and connected continent.
The world is becoming smaller and smaller by the day, and this is all thanks to the power of technology. So we at Network are here at Cape Town at the AfricaCom 2014 to see and learn how exactly Africa will be connected in the near future.
Though appearing to be an event for the high and mighty of the information, communications and technology industry, the 17th annual AfricaCom was also attended by the young and hip.
I think it's very important to just understand the tech industry as a whole. The only way that you can contribute as an entrepreneur is to actually understand the dynamics of the environment as it stands. So that's why we're here.
We basically came to check on job interviews and opportunities for the future, you see, what we can go into in the career, because we're actually starting networking right now.
Global and local exhibitors came together to discuss the role of Africa in the digital ecosystem.
We need to have all the stakeholders, the different actors of the ecosystem participating to this effort.
Some of the key points included the initiative to connect Africa using broadband networks and turning the continent's cities into smart cities.
If you look at studies today from the World Bank, for example, there's a direct link between broadband penetration and GDP growth, which means the more you have broadband penetration, the more you have economic growth.
We're here at AfricaCom showing off some of our new products and trying to get a message across with the smart cities, with the connected cities.
We also met a 13-year-old application developer, Sam Berger, who let us in on his Giza insurance app.
I developed a couple. So the one's a Giza insurance app. So when your Giza is malfunctioning or you want to check the warranty or anything about it, you just scan the QR code and it'll give some information about your Giza and then about the plumber who installed that Giza.
Some cool proud South African inventions like the Mint tablet and the Lula airtime terminal were also big players at the conference.
So we manufacture a mobile point of sales terminal, and what it's used for is used to sell things like electricity, airtime and your satellite TV, except in the informal sector. So think about your rural areas, your farms, your mines and your township type environments.
Mobile devices were not left behind at this year's AfricaCom. I even got to take selfies with one of Huawei's 3 newly launched smartphones. We also came across one of the oldest handset brands, Alcatel One Touch. They had an evolution of their phones on display.
We needed to get in touch with a new buying power that's on the market, and nowadays we all know that's the youth. So how do we make ourselves more attainable and more attractive to a different category of person than we had previously done? So smartphones, yes, we all know smartphones is the way to go in the business nowadays.
The conference proved not to just be a talk shop, as one also had some fun trying out the smartwatch by Intel. The technology conference opened doors on Tuesday, November 11th and came to a close on Thursday, the 13th.
The creation of jobs in the digital sector has been a big talking point at this year's Impact Sourcing at Scale conference in Johannesburg. The meeting brought together African governments, non-governmental organizations and the private sector. The event was organized by the Rockefeller Foundation.
Digital technology is something that can't be avoided anywhere in the world today. Discussions at this year's Impact Sourcing at Scale conference focused on giving young people and women technology skills.
If we look at all the research done by the World Bank and other people, for every increase like 1% in broadband penetration or internet access penetration, you're likely to get up to a percentage increase in GDP. So it is very, very important, especially for the youth.
Governments from across Africa, the private sector and non-governmental organizations have been attending this conference. Some shared their country's success stories.
We've worked with over 10,000 women, and majority of whom have been able to secure jobs in the ICT sector.
Government representatives at the conference say they're trying their best to ensure that their countries are on the same level with the rest of the world.
The policy and regulatory side intended to open up for the young entrepreneurs and young, sharp, intelligent people to go into entrepreneurship in ICT. And that's what is happening. On the infrastructure side, we are deploying the infrastructure and make sure that they have something they can ride on to do whatever they want to do.
This is the second Impact Sourcing at Scale conference. The first took place in 2011. It is now up to governments and the private sector to ensure that the networks formed here benefit technology sectors in various African countries.
The banner that criticizes Cell C can stay on Beas Nordia in Fairland. This is because the mobile phone network operator lost its court bid for it to be removed, but the banner has been somewhat vandalized.
On Thursday, Cell C couldn't convince the court to get the businessman, Judge Procas, to remove this banner. It reads that Cell C is the most useless network in the country. Sandton's branch manager's name and contact details were also displayed on the banner. Procas says he erected it because the mobile phone network operator was charging him for someone else's bill. He reported this to the Sandton City Cell C branch and nothing was ever done. When he wanted to buy a car, he found out that he had been blacklisted because of the Cell C account. That's when he decided to put up the banner. Someone has changed some wording on it, and it now reads that Cell C is the most useful provider in SA as opposed to useless.
The South African Human Rights Commission has heard many cases that involved hate speech in social media. Many of us would remember model Jessica Leandra, who referred to a black petrol attendant as a monkey on Twitter. There have also been instances when what's said in social media ends up in court, as it is the case at the moment with Steve Hofmeyer and Conrad Koch, the man behind the Chester Missing puppet. Chester Missing is a puppet that engages politicians and celebrities. Many of those he chats to in social media are only too happy to respond to him. But there's one man that wants Chester Missing to stay away from his Twitter handle. That is Afrikaans actor and musician Steve Hofmeyer. On Twitter, Hofmeyer said the ANC has created a new apartheid and that black people were the architects of apartheid. Chester Missing took him on. Hofmeyer went to court to ask for Conrad Koch, the handler of the puppet, not to engage him. On Wednesday, the Randburg Magistrates Court granted interim protection for Hofmeyer. Koch can't talk about the case, but he told us that he partly uses his account to discuss important issues.
I'll sit at State of the Nation or at Mangong, at the IEC. I've done all of this with Chester's account, commenting on what's happening, exactly like any journalist would. But I'm doing it funny, which is great because it creates a way for people to engage, especially young people, to engage with politics.
Chester Missing also questioned those he says sponsor Steve Hofmeyer, like Land Rover and Pick n Pay. It's not the first time South Africa has had a popular figure dealing with issues of race and racism on Twitter. 2 years ago, then 20-year-old model Jessica Leandra referred to a black person as a monkey and used the K word. She ended up in the Human Rights Commission. The commission says it deals with many similar cases annually.
And we're beginning to see an increase in the use of social media in the perpetuation of hate speech and as well as using social media to perpetuate racism and racist comments being made in that space.
Koch and Chester Missing, through satire, are now playing the role of educating white South Africans who deny white privilege in social media.
I'm a beneficiary of apartheid. I'm a white South African. Privilege is very much in my something that I have. So dealing with that is a significant portion of what I do.
Egypt's economy has been on a rocky road following the country's political turmoil in the past 3 years. The country is seeking to upgrade its telecommunications infrastructure. Only this will cost billions of dollars.
Technology has become one of the key drivers of the world's economy. For this reason, North African country Egypt is planning on joining the digital ecosystem by upgrading their information communications and technology sector.
There is no doubt that The technology and communication sector is one of the very competitive sectors when it comes to investment. And as part of building our new Egypt, a modern Egypt, ICT is a cornerstone to do that.
A cornerstone that will cost an arm and a leg. The country will need billions of dollars from investors in order to get the ICT sector running and to boost the economy.
For the high-speed internet, for each 10% penetration, this creates between 50 to 60,000 jobs. And
50 to
60,000 jobs.
Okay.
And contribution to the GDP by 1.3 to 1.4. So you could just imagine the impact economically on the job opportunities as well as in developing other sectors. You cannot develop, as I mentioned before, education or health without having this infrastructure in place.
As part of efforts to reform the sector, Egypt's government approved a long-awaited plan in September to issue a unified landline and mobile telecoms license, opening the way for fixed-line monopoly Telecom Egypt to offer mobile services. However, the country must first get over a few obstacles before any changes in its ICT infrastructure take place.
It's News Network at SABC.co.za and email. After the break, we'll chat about comets. Stay with us.
GovTech is South Africa's premier ICT event hosted by CETA. Our theme for GovTech 2014 is a government empowered by technology. Our topics will explore e-government, infrastructure and broadband, reducing the cost of ICT and service delivery, best practice, innovation and success stories. Join us at the Durban ICC on 2nd to 5th November 2014. Register now on www.govtech.co.za.
SABC Network on Facebook and Twitter. Welcome back. Now, scientists are worried that the results from Rosetta might not reach Earth. This after the reserve battery on the robot started to dwindle, which might jeopardize a 10-year-long mission. The Rosetta robot landed on a 67P comet earlier this week. This rover will gather information on the comet in an attempt to figure out how the planets were formed.
Scientists are anxious that the pictures are blurry as the robot has landed on a rocky surface. The robot is safely anchored on the surface despite technical problems. This after the concern that the lander will drift back into space because of earlier failed deployment. Comets are leftover residues from the formation of the 4.6 billion-year-old solar system. With this 10-year-old project, scientists hope that samples from the surface of the 6P will help to explain the creation of planets and life. The head of the European Space Agency operations, Paulo Ferri, says they are happy with the landing.
We had a very clear signal there, and we also received data from the lander, housekeeping data, and also science data. That's the very good news.
But Ferri says they've seen some challenges as well.
Not so good news is that the anchoring harpoons apparently did not fire. So the lander is not anchored to the surface.
Among several records set by the mission, Rosetta has become the first spacecraft to orbit a comet rather than flying past to take pictures. Rosetta reached the comet, which is about 3 by 5 kilometer rock, discovered in August 1969. This journey took about 10 years, 5 months and 4 days.
So what's the significance of exploring comets, and how is Africa placed in the race to exploit these solar entities? To discuss this, we're joined by Simpiwe Madlanga. He is the science communicator at the Hartbeespoort Radio Astronomy Observatory. Simpiwe joins us from our Port Elizabeth studios. Hello, and thank you for being a part of our network, Simpiwe.
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers.
Simpiwe, what are comets?
Basically, comets are solar system objects that are coming from the nether regions of the solar system. You have your sun and have all the planets, and the planets that we recognize now, there's 8 of them. So beyond Neptune, there is a belt called the Kuiper belt. That is where you would even have your dwarf planets like Pluto, Makemake, Haumea, but you have all of these snowballs, basically dirty snowballs, where they are made of ice, and from time to time they do orbit and they move close to the sun.
What's the significance of exploring one? What's Europe hoping to gain from this?
Okay, it is a very historic event, what has happened in this week. The important thing about comets is that a lot of them are as old as the solar system. And in studying them, you'll find the material that is there is well preserved. But more importantly, they want to find out the relationship with planet Earth having water, for example, carbon-rich material that they are thinking it was due to impacts with comets in the past. So essentially that's why they studied so much, just to try and answer those questions.
The Rosetta made contact with this particular one 3 months ago already. So why did it take so long?
Okay. The Rosetta basically went into proximity with this comet, but it started orbiting it. Hence, we talk of Rosetta as being the orbiter and Philae as the lander. And that actually happened, that it reached there on the 6th of August, which is my birthday this year. You have a lot of dynamics, but most comets are usually semi-round. With this one, they have even likened it to a rubber duck. It is peculiar in shape. So Rosetta would have needed to get into a stable orbit, as in moving around it, them understanding how they can then deploy Philae in order for them to have it land where they need it to.
Now we're hearing about the depletion of the batteries. What happens now?
Okay, it is because it is the first time that we have a lander on a comet, but it is not only Philae that is very significant. Obviously, they would have liked that more time was had to probe the comet itself, but fortunately, by Saturday morning, they had received all of the data that was being collected by it. It started off with the photographs and just getting your density, temperature, and all those type of things. But it was able to, in the end, drill to a depth of around 25 centimeters, and that was analyzed and sent to Rosetta. Now, even though it is in dormant mode, a bit of load shedding, if you will, because it cannot recharge, but the orbiter is still there, and it will accompany this comet as it moves toward the sun. And it is hoped that when it gets closer to the sun, the comet itself now, perhaps they'll be able to get a bit of sunlight to Philae, and hopefully it might reawaken and assist them with more data that can be collected. But importantly, the orbiter, which is Rosetta, will be with that comet well into 2015 toward the end of the year, continuing in getting whatever data is possible from the vantage point it is at.
Simphiwe Madlanga, thank you very much for being a part of our network tonight.
Thank you for having me.
All right, after the break, we'll tell you about 3 South African cities that are getting their own domain names. SABC Network on Facebook and Twitter. Stay with us.
Guinea is reopening an Ebola clinic in its remote southeast in an effort to prevent sick nationals seeking better treatment elsewhere.
The new labor law also seeks to clamp down on violent strikes by holding a trade union liable for violence committed by its members during a strike.
The new canal is set to boost annual revenues to about $13 billion by 2023. It's part of a larger project to expand port and shipping facilities around the canal.
This is Vigigas's 4th victory on the PGA Tour.
That's all the weather that I have for you for now. Stay tuned.
For all your business news, catch News at 1 every day. Be informed.
SABC Network on Facebook and Twitter, welcome back. The Alexa rankings of Africa's top 10 most visited websites in 2014 have been released. And 2 countries dominate the lineup. These countries are South Africa, which is the most sophisticated economy on the continent, and Nigeria, which is Africa's most populous. Here's Dile Kaswane with the top 10 list of Africa's most popular websites in 2014.
4 South African online sites have made it into the top 10 of Africa's most visited websites in 2014. This is according to the Alexa rankings, an organization that monitors global internet traffic. Standard Bank, the e-commerce company Bidobai, and FNB make up part of the bottom half of the list, at positions 9, 8, and 6 respectively. The top South African site that makes it on the list is News24, which is the 4th most visited site on the continent. News24 is also a former number 1 on the rankings. Nigeria also registered 4 winning sites in the top 10 of Africa's most visited websites. Featuring at number 10 is Konga, which is said to be Africa's biggest internet company in a few years to come. An investment of over 600 million rands is said to be injected into the online retailer, raising its total value to around 2 billion rands. Nigeria also takes top honors on the list with its popular discussion forum Nairaland named number 1. Nairaland covers hundreds of topics and has more than 500,000 members as well as millions more visitors each day. Egypt's online newspaper version of the Egypt Independent and Google make up the rest of the top 10 of Africa's most popular websites in 2014.
Sticking with websites, if you are used to finishing off your local internet searches with the domain addresses .co.za, life is about to get very interesting. This is because 3 of South Africa's largest cities are to introduce their own domain addresses. .Joburg, .Cape Town, and .Durban addresses are now up for grabs to the general public. .Africa is also in the pipeline. To explain the city and Africa domains, we're now joined by the CEO of organizations tasked with issuing and managing them, Vigampisane of the ZA Domain Name Authority. Welcome to Network, sir.
Good evening, sir.
What's the significance of city domain names?
Well, as you rightfully said, that people are used to searching the internet in a particular way, whether it's co.za or .com and so forth. We now have the internet changing. We'll have what we call new top-level domains that you've never seen before. We used the opportunity to represent South Africa's interest, and we felt that we should secure 3 domains for the 3 leading cities of South Africa, which are Durban, Cape Town, and Joburg. We did that having done research, and we realized that it was going to be a trend for cities worldwide to obtain their own top-level domains. You can name them London, Sydney, Paris, and so forth. So we felt that let us apply for these 3 cities. The significance of them is that they provide a new identity, obviously. If you're used to co.za, you can now get your own city-specific web address. It helps you more so from a search engine point of view. When people are looking for businesses, let us say a restaurant in Joburg, and you are called Kaya's Restaurant.Joburg, and people search for a restaurant in Joburg on Google or Bing or so forth, in all likelihood you are going to rank up higher naturally without having to pay, because you already have an ID or an identity that specifies that particular city.
Yeah, you mentioned that Joburg, Durban, and Cape Town are chosen because they are the 3 largest cities in South Africa. But what about somebody that lives in Bloemfontein, for example, or Pretoria, or let's say East London? Are they going to get domain names soon as well, or are you just focusing on those 3?
Well, it's an interesting question. We had realities to deal with, economic and commercial realities. There are two entities involved, obviously. The ZA Domain Name Authority, the regulator of South Africa's internet name space, and the operator, the ZA Central Registry. They are the entity that actually applied with our permission and edging for these 3 cities. One of the realities was that it was quite expensive to apply. Each application costed us back then in 2012, $185,000. It worked out around 1.9 million rands, times that by 3 for a non-profit entity. And it's important to say, of course, that the funding came from .za. So the 3 city domains are actually children of .za. Are we going to see other cities? We will see. There will be another round of applications in 2017. We've been urged to consider provinces, at least by parliamentarians sometimes, and the Department of Telecommunications, to which we report. So we'll have to make a careful decision in consultation with government about which next cities or names to apply for, but in all likelihood, it's going to be provinces.
Now, businesses have been applying for domain names since July. Has the uptake been good?
The uptake has been good recently, and I'll explain why. From the 1st of July, we had a pre-public phase, which was a phase when only trademark owners registered with the ZA Central Registry could apply for names to protect their brands. It's a measure that is required when you apply for these names. And then also people who are interested in, in buying those high-value premium names, and they could apply all the way until the end of October. And on the 4th of November, we then entered what is called a public phase, which means now Thabo on the street can apply for his Thabo.Joburg name, or a restaurant in Cape Town can now apply for its name under .Cape Town. So the uptake has been good. We exceeded 6,000 last week, 1.5 weeks later. It looks like by the end of the month we may have gotten to 10,000.
All right, so Vega Mbisane, thank you very much for being a part of our network tonight.
You're welcome, sir.
Now, that's all we have for you. Find us on SABC Network on Facebook and Twitter. It's News Network at sabc.co.za and email. We leave you with a video of a smart cruise ship that has robots, bartenders and DJs.
Tate PMX My Yeah, baby girl sing. You got a blue sky she does a good baseline. Let's fly. Come on. Cruising in my Let's fly. You got a blue sky she does a good baseline. Let's fly. Let's go, baby. Yeah, let me take you on the ride, baby. With them Thai riders, new drop, no top, still ride by ya. No way that I vibe by ya. Show you round my world, my crowd, my town, no other ties flyer. Yeah, Thai say you know that's for life. That's why you see them gold chains with more ice. Shorty come and let's roll. Take a night. After that we can roll into